Everybody, Andy here again, still out in Spain, going out for another little walk like I did the other day, in the same sort of area. It's wandering around, Sunday morning, and hardly anyone about. It certainly seems quieter than it was the other day anyway. Not that it's particularly a busy trunk road up here, if you know what I mean. I was going to write a blog post last night. I thought, no, I'll record it. I'll go out tomorrow for a little wander and do a bit of a vlog. I was in the town the other day, because what we seem to do here, get into a little rhythm of life, especially this time, because we're within walking distance of the town. We haven't got a car this time. So it's a 10-minute walk, if that. It all seems longer coming back uphill, especially with shopping. And so you get into a little bit of a routine, and just about every single day, either on my own or with my wife, we've gone into town in the morning. The girls are still lounging about, and had a coffee in the town square, and then gone and done the shopping or done whatever, or just have a coffee, just have a wander around. And it's one of those great things that's given us a bit more of a feel about the place. If anyone has read the blogs that I've written will know I keep going on about it, this sort of area being a quite authentic sort of area, to the best of my knowledge. Because of the way that it is. I mean, you can sit there watching the world go by, which I'll come to in a minute, but one day we were sitting there the other day, and a guy's driving his horses down through the town. So about 3 horses came down. Old boy, like a real old cowboy, sort of, old farmer. And it is a farming area. It's pretty much scrub land around here, but there's a lot of farming, especially fruit and things like that. But cattle, except pigs, sheep, goats, and I had a load of goats shepherded past our property the other day. All the tinkling of cowbells or goat bells or whatever. And you think, what on earth is that noise? So it's a great place to sit, and what you find there is you can sit in these cafes, and they're all up and down the main little side street, and they've got canopies over the top now to keep the sun away, and it's that real sort of cafe culture that they'd like to get in Britain. That real Mediterranean sort of culture, I think. Sitting outside, obviously the weather makes a lot of difference, totally accept that. In Britain, you worry if it's going to start raining or something like that. Whereas here, you've got far more chance of actually being able to sit there and enjoy your coffee, or your beer, or your glass of wine, or your tapas, or your food, or whatever it might be. And so there's that, so much easier to just sit there and watch the world go by. But you'll sit there, and you'll be sitting amongst lots of other people, and a lot of the time, you've been sort of playing a little game. It's during this time whether these people are tourists or whether they're locals, because the locals use these places just as much as the tourists do, and that's what's so good about them. You know that these places aren't necessarily going to go out of business because the tourist trade isn't there for one reason or another, or the winter comes and it dips a bit. These places are going to be used, are used all the time, but it's also the way that they're used, which I find. And we were actually discussing this yesterday while we were sat there, and it's great. There was this guy who was sat there on a table near me the other day in the same cafe, English guy, and he just sat there and he was talking about it. I just overheard him say to his friends, he said, I could sit here all day, every day, quite happily. And I know exactly what he means, because you can sit there and literally watch the world go by. Just about everybody passes through that sort of area, or seems to, and you start to recognise sort of certain characters and the way that the people behave. All the old boys will come down and they'll sit around on the benches, they'll sit in the cafes and not actually order anything. There's one group that sit in the town and they play dominoes all day, and they've commandeered about 2 or 3 of the tables out of this cafe, and no one cares. They're just sitting there quite happily playing dominoes, having a great time, and they've been doing that ever since we've been come here. Not continuously, and little things like that. And other guys, yesterday we were down there, and there was this real hum of conversation coming from one of the cafes, not the one that we were in. And it seemed to be full of all these old boys just sitting around, and I didn't see any of them with a drink of any description, anything that they would have paid for. So it's great to sit there and watch them, and the way that they while away their time, and they just have a chat. They come up and they all see each other. And I said to my wife, if I was Spanish, I'd love to. I could just imagine myself sort of coming along when you get to that sort of, that retirement age, the proper retirement age, and your life changes. You come there and you sit there and you meet your mates and all this type of thing. And she said, yeah, I can just imagine you sitting there. She said, you probably have a laptop as well, but but one of the good things about that is it gets everyone together. That's one of the things that I like about it, is that these guys, if they were at home, they might be in a home. They might be sitting at home in some little apartment, because a lot of these people live in the apartments in the town, but it's their opportunity to come out, to meet their friends. And the women do it as well, to an extent as well. They'll be passing, doing their shopping and stuff, and they'll be stopping. Everywhere you go, there's people stopped, having a chat with their friends, and they all, you know, sort of say hello to each other. And it's a slower pace of life, obviously, as well. That certainly makes a difference. So that is something that I really, really like the look of. But it's also the fact that I'll go up here and see what's up here. I know there's some water over here, you can probably hear it in a minute. But we were sat there yesterday, and there's all these little cafes, and I was saying about the way that people sit here, the way that people use the places differently to what they would use them at home. Trying to get out of here, a bit of light on me now, and the way that they would use them at home. And my wife said, you can never imagine people, because what they've got there, apart from all the cafes, you've got these little places that sell like churros and cakes and pastries and bread and things like that as well. But people, what they do is they go into this particular shop that sells a lot of these and actually does them on the spot, makes them to order, so to speak. And then these people get them in their bags or whatever, and then they go and sit in the cafe. A cafe, the one that we use, which actually sells bread and cakes and things like that. And they sit there and they'll have their coffee, they'll order their coffee and everything like that from the shop. And they'll just sit there. My wife said, can you imagine that ever happening in Britain? And I said, well, one of the reasons for that is that all of those places are privately owned. They're family owned, whatever, individually owned. They're not owned by a corporation. They're not owned by any big company or group or chain or something like that. And there is the real big difference. That's one of the reasons why it couldn't work in somewhere like Britain. The culture's different, the way that we act is different as well. But I could never imagine, exactly as my wife said, you could never imagine sitting down in a British cafe, and we've got quite a few where I live, where you went and bought some cakes from one place and went and sat in another one and ate them. They just would not have that, even if it was a privately owned place. But the majority of them now are owned by corporations. You think of all the big coffee chains which you've got in America and that as well, and other parts of the world, and you can name a few. It just would not happen, and I think that's partly down to the whole attitude that they've got here. And that's one of the reasons that I like to sit there, we like to sit there. And it has, you just sit there and you relax, it's chilled out, there's never any hassle. Everyone, you know, I think the youngsters go and stay in their own little place. We think they go up to the top of the town in the town square and they meet up there. Whereas all the other guys are all wandering about, having a chat and this sort of. So really, really relaxing thing. And that's what's so good about this time, as I said, is the fact that we've been able to do that this time. Because we haven't had a car. And maybe there's a lesson to be learned there, that if you actually get around and you walk and you don't have to park the car and have to think about where you're going, that you can actually explore places a bit better than what you can in the past. Because before we've had to park the car, so you're a bit wary about where you want to walk and all this sort of stuff. And you don't go into town so much, because I'm not a great one for driving, I'll be perfectly honest. I'd rather not have to bother. So that's what's another thing that's been so good, is that you can just actually walk into town. And I enjoy walking as I'm doing this morning. Well, it's a bit warm this morning. So there you go, that's one of those little things I wanted to mention. You know, you can sit there all day quite happily, and I could sit there all day quite happily, and you probably could just after one cup of coffee. And another thing that they do, I noticed, there's a little bar over the road, it's a cafe as well. But you get the people in there, and there's some people that my wife noticed yesterday, there was about 10 o'clock in the morning, they had their coffee, a particular special kind of coffee, I'm not sure what it was, very dark, but with it, they had a glass of brandy. And this is at 10 o'clock in the morning, and once again, you can't really imagine that. And these are, put this delicately, these are ordinary people, these aren't sort of winos or something like alcoholics that you see in certain parts of the world that might be drinking at that time. These are normal people, just having a coffee, but having an alcoholic drink with it, because it doesn't matter. This is the sort of place where you eat when you're hungry, you drink when you're thirsty, and you go to bed when you're tired, and you basically just do what you want, when you want. And I think that is one of the things that is quite refreshing about somewhere like this. But soon it'll be back to reality. But I'm sure I'll be back again. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for your time. I'll speak to you again soon. Goodbye.